it was reorganized. So about 4 years ago.
Okay,
So
that
yeah.
makes sense. And I love that area. We go at least every 3 years to go and visit, and then we always go up to the coast and hit the
Yeah.
ferries and stuff. We want to go up to Vancouver
Mm.
at one point too, but
Vancouver's a nice city. Yeah,
yeah,
our family before COVID, we used to go up there a couple times a year, just for a long weekend. And we haven't, I think we've only been back once since COVID happened, and everything's gotten more expensive, so it's a little trickier to get up there.
yeah,
But yeah, I love going up there. Victoria is a really nice place too, if you've never been out to Vancouver Island.
yeah.
Um,
That's where we want to go. Yep.
okay, okay. Yeah, yeah,
And
Victoria is really, really nice.
I've been there before, and we had to take ferries to get to the. I actually dated a girl from there that I was pretty serious about, and I went, and they lived right on Victoria Island, and I was
Mm.
blown away with how pretty it was. So,
Yeah, it's amazing out there. So, and nice
yeah,
and quiet too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so my name is Spencer Hackey. I am a professor at Brigham Young University, Idaho. I teach public speaking, professional presentations, study and life skills, and I'm doing some sabbatical research right now. One of the school's outcomes is graduating effective communicators.
Mm.
And so when I started looking at what I wanted to research, I started asking questions of what their measuring tools were to evaluate if we're graduating effective communicators. And they said, we don't know. We just think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so I took a step back and I was like, all right, well, let's find out what the world needs. And
Mm.
so I'm just interviewing a bunch of people in looking at, well, I call it the it factor.
Mm.
What qualities, skills, and attributes make an individual not only employable, but good members of teams, somebody that you want to keep on your team. So they have it. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a good way to
Yeah,
put it,
yeah.
but do you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've got about 10 questions.
Okay.
If you can think about the best employees, coworkers that you work with or that you're under, and just keep them in mind as I ask you these questions, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Okay. Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
And just so you're aware, the framework is I've got 4 stages. I've got the finding stage, the interview stage, the trial stage, and then the promotional stage, or I guess long
Mm.
term. And I have 2 questions per each one of those
Yeah.
to try
Okay.
to figure out. All right. So when you think about the best people in your company or that you've hired, how are they first discovered or noticed?
Yeah, that I don't know that there's been one like one channel or approach. We've had people come from different backgrounds and resource pools and methods and things. Some of the obviously we recruit from like at the university level. So,
Yeah.
I think that's the typical university recruiting model where I think people apply and then get selected for an interview and then they go through kind of a formal interview process, which is probably pretty comparable to other big public or client service type organizations or professional services type firms where you probably have a couple of rounds of interviews, maybe on campus interviews, and then people make it past that gate, and then maybe they'll come on site for interviews or things like that. I haven't been, well, no, I take that back. I've been a little bit involved in that. A lot of the time we'll start at the like the internship level. I think a lot of our hires at that more junior kind of the new to their career level we tend to go we tend to interview for internships first, and then they come and they work with us for, you know, what is it, like 4 to 8 weeks or something over the summer, and that's a good opportunity for everybody to figure out if it's a good fit, right? They get a chance to figure out if Grant Thornton's a good fit, or and we get to figure out if they're a good fit with the company and if there's someone we want to hire. And I'd say most of the time, they end up getting an offer at the end, and then we'll bring them in that way. So um, it's nice going about it that way because you are going into that decision to hire somebody with a lot more information because you've actually worked with
Yeah.
them for a couple of months. So I think that's a good way to identify them. Another way that we have brought a few people in, at least onto my team, are through like subcontracting type arrangements where we need additional support. We don't have enough people on our team to fill immediate needs. So we'll reach out to subcontracting firms or staffing firms and we'll bring people in often on a kind of a I mean, it's kind of like a rent to own model sort of thing, right? Where you bring them in as a subcontractor with the right to convert them to a full-time employee, and then the subcontracting firm gets a like a finder's fee cut for that, I think is how it goes.
Okay.
So we found a number of people through that sort of an approach. And occasionally, I think it's probably a little bit less frequent, but we do just also have just kind of the traditional hiring and
Okay.
recruiting approach. I don't know how active we are in that now, though. I can't think of many people who have joined my team even more broadly, like not just here in the Pacific Northwest region, but more broadly through that kind of traditional recruiting at the experience level as much. Um,
Mhm.
it seems like, which is funny because that's how I joined GT. I was at PwC for about 15 years before jumping over to GT. And that's how I joined the firm, but I don't know a lot of other people that have joined like that. It seems like it's mostly at the kind of the the college entry level or through like subcontracting, it's a contract to hire
Okay.
sort of approach. Yeah, so I think those are kind of the main methods that we use. But remind me what your question is because I think I've probably missed
No,
some of
you
the things you asked
you've hit
about.
it because I was asking how you first discovered them, and it
Yeah.
sounds to me like it's well. Let me ask you this: when you do internships and subcontractors, do you do an interview process with them to see
We
if
do.
they're a good fit
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that internship level?
Yeah. So for interns, yeah, there's typically a round of interviews that they'll go through. They'll usually interview with like a manager and then maybe somebody at the senior, like either the director, senior manager level or a partner level.
Mhm.
Um,
So would
yeah.
so would you say that when they interview and they get an internship, that's a good way to, all right, they have their foot in the door
Mhm.
and then if they continue to do well, then they would get a job offer at the end.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
pretty standard. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure there are cases where people get an internship and end up not getting an offer, but I think generally, if we have found room for an intern headcount, there's room for an FTE headcount, at like in the future too. Around the time they're finishing up their internship or at the time that they're finishing up school, I guess, because typically an internship might be like the summer or a couple summers before they graduate. So.
Yeah. Do you ever sort through the applicants yourself?
No, we have a recruiting team that
Okay.
goes through and I think kind of weeds it out, and then I think they'll do kind of like an initial screening interview. I'm honestly not too familiar with how in depth that is, or like who they're meeting with, like if they do that with most of the applicants, or I assume they do some weeding out of resumes and then have that screening interview. So.
All right. From your experience during the interview process, are there any qualities or skills that make someone stand out during that initial hiring process beyond their resumes or formal qualifications?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd say the resume, formal qualifications, uh, you know, college transcripts or things like that are probably, to be honest, a little bit less important than just good communication skills. Um, being able to carry yourself well, to communicate clearly. Um, I think a lot of it, to be honest, comes down to the ability to make a connection with your interviewer. And I found that even, 20 plus years ago when I was interviewing. The interviews that went the best weren't always the ones where I got to focus on my technical skills. It was where I
Mhm.
established a kind of a personal connection with the interviewer. Um, I think I think knowing that the person that you're interviewing is someone that you would want to have on your team or interact with or work with every day is ultimately probably more important than technical skills because technical skills, as important as they are, I think can be taught. And if someone has demonstrated that they can get through college and they can learn things and they have good communication and interpersonal skills, like we can generally be pretty confident that we'll be able to teach them the technical side of it. Um, I'd say even someone who's strongly technical in college probably isn't going to have the exact right technical skills that we're looking for
Because they have
necessarily.
to train them anyways.
Yeah, they're going to have to be trained anyway.
Yeah.
So just that ability to learn, that kind of that sense of being ambitious and having drive and goals and things like that. I think probably from my perspective is more important than any specific technical qualification typically. Now, if you're hiring for someone who's more experienced, like if we're looking for a more senior role and we
Uh-huh.
have specific topics that we want them to cover, then yeah, I mean, of course, we'll delve into that a little bit more and
Okay.
ask about their experience there and how they'd handle certain situations, like from a technical perspective. It becomes more important the more senior they are. But still, even if they have the technical skills, but it's someone that you're like, I wouldn't want to work with that person every day. Like it's probably not going to matter how much they know. So.
Oh, I love that. Are there any common reasons someone gets hired, even when you've got multiple qualified candidates?
So like a differentiator between
Yeah.
different people.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the differentiator?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it really does have to do with that that ability to communicate clearly to state um what why. So if a person can say um why they want to work for GT, can communicate it clearly, can talk about what they've done or the impact they've had, in other situations, um, and they do it better than the next person, then they're probably going to stand out a little bit more.
Yeah. Or
So
especially when you're like, well, this one communicates better, that one, yeah, looks
yeah,
good. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
Are there any,
well,
oh
real
yeah,
quick,
sorry.
one caveat there is that it can be tricky because it's easy to take, I think, communication skills at a superficial level
Mhm.
sometimes, right? I think especially being in like the Pacific Northwest where it's really diverse and we have a lot of backgrounds. I mean, a ton of my coworkers are not native English speakers. Um, and it's easy sometimes to maybe let biases creep in and think, well, this person's a native English speaker and can communicate really well and clearly, but that doesn't necessarily always translate into the best communication skills in a professional setting. So sometimes people who are non-native English speakers, even though they might struggle to find the right words and maybe don't sound as crisp or as like their thoughts are quite as well organized as someone who's grown up speaking English, for example. I think they still can be just as good or if not better. You have to figure out how to kind of navigate through some of those either cultural or kind of personal history type situations that people have too.
Yeah.
So
That's, I like that. Are there any signs or gaps, or I should say, are there any warning signs or gaps that make you hesitant to hire someone, even if they appear qualified on paper?
um yeah, I mean I think you can often tell when people don't feel like when a candidate doesn't feel like they're as prepared as they could be for the discussion. And when I'm interviewing someone, I try and give them a little bit of you'll be a little bit understanding that it can be a stressful situation, right? And it might be they may not be thinking quite as clearly and quite as organized as they would typically just because they're under a bit of pressure during an interview. But you can kind of tell as you try and get them to relax a little bit and talk about themselves, you can tell when people haven't really prepared as much compared to others. They haven't really thought about the experiences that they've had, haven't really thought about why they want to work for a place like Grant Thornton. Um, they haven't maybe had some of the experiences that you're looking for from like a team interaction or leadership perspective or things like that. So I think during the course of an interview, um, those types of concerns typically seem to bubble up pretty quickly, just
Yeah.
just through normal discussion. So that's something that would often be a um, maybe a red flag, when you're interviewing someone. So
Mhm. Uh, After someone is hired, what qualities or behaviors help them become a strong long-term fit for the workforce?
yeah, no, that's a good question. Um, I think the top performers that I've worked with and had on my team, people who are willing to ask questions when they have them. So ask the questions, but then learn the answer. Like so some people ask questions, but then they'll ask the same questions over and over and over again, and they never figure it out. Which sometimes that's as bad as never asking the question in the first place.
Yeah,
Um,
or worse, because it's
or
all the
worse, yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, not being afraid to ask questions, and learn from them. Being willing to take ownership for things is a huge one. No matter what level someone is at, like, they're always going to have an ability to take ownership, um, and to look for opportunities to raise their hand. And, those are really the people who stand out the most, compared to someone who kind of, maybe sits back and waits for things to come to them, or someone who, you know, knows that if they don't do something, someone else will pick up the slack and do it for them. Yeah, you
Mhm.
kind of have the opposite ends of the spectrum there, right? You have the kind of the doers and the go-getters, the people who are motivated and ambitious versus the people who just kind of rely on others to take care of it, or are more than happy to let someone else pick up the slack.
Yeah. Acting versus being acted upon, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
Um, yeah, and I think I think that really is the case at all levels, right? So it could be even an intern can take ownership for things and can raise their hand and volunteer for stuff. And I think being able to demonstrate that, acting like the buck stops with them, even if it doesn't really, I think
yeah.
goes a long way.
Well, because it contributes to the buy-in as
Hmm.
well.
Right.
Uh, are there any skills or characteristics that separate employees who simply perform their jobs? They show up, they clock in, they clock out, versus those that become strong candidates for promotion?
Yeah. I mean, number one, I think is that sense of ownership. I
Okay.
would say that's the biggest differentiator. But in our world today, being flexible and willing to adapt really, really quickly sometimes is also pretty important. Um, right now, I think the people who seem to be getting the most positive attention are the ones who are willing to do things like embrace new technologies like AI and really dive in and learn about them, and figure out how they can leverage them, um, versus other people who kind of, maybe are a little hesitant or nervous or averse to change. So I think that ability to adapt is just getting more and more important, feels like.
I can see that. What qualities, behaviors, or skill gaps prevent people from being promoted even when they're technically good at their jobs?
Um, yeah, I'm going to go back again, a third time, to that sense of ownership,
Mhm.
right? So if someone isn't taking responsibility for the things that they should be taking responsibility for, but that's going to be the number one thing I think that I've seen hold people back when they're trying to move to the next level. Um, I'm trying to think of other ones. I think not having the right support group. So I mean that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. As cynical as it is, tends to be tends to be pretty true in most
Mhm.
situations. If you don't have the right people supporting your progression, um, you're probably not going to get very far. So I think really aligning yourself with the right leaders and the right teams, um, I think can make a pretty significant difference too.
Okay, and you're talking about at work of where they
Mhm.
get along well with enough people that they kind of create their support group at work.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah, please.
yeah, sorry, and I think in our professional services, there's always an aspect of selling too, right? So the more senior you get, the more the expectation is that you'll be able to be out selling new work. So that network and that support group, I think having a network, like we were talking more, I think about internal support there for progression, but as far as business development goes, I think having an external support group is probably um, pretty important too, and probably gets even more important the more senior someone gets.
And you're talking about professionals that are not part of the company, but that you can reach out with and collaborate with.
So
What?
either reach out, collaborate with, or sell work too, to be
Okay.
frank, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. Um, when you think about the people who are most successful in your organization or your industry, what qualities, characteristics, or skills did they consistently demonstrate?
Yeah, I think those interpersonal skills and the ability to communicate clearly and I'd say diplomatically is pretty critical. Um, Having that solid network of people across the organization, not just on your own team, but different regions, different practices and teams, lines of service and things like that. I think they make a big difference. And yeah, and I think again, the more senior you get, the more you have to sell. So people who are kind of natural salespeople seem to do better in organizations like ours
Mhm.
as you get more senior. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I, I can't think of, I can't help because of course, in the business world, we keep saying sell, but um, correct me if I'm wrong. Would this be similar to just being able to persuade, like powers of persuasion?
Yeah, I mean that definitely comes into play. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I know when I put the word persuasion and selling together, it makes me think of like a car salesman a little
Yeah.
bit,
Okay.
right? I think really in our space we probably want to think more of like like a trusted advisor type of
Okay.
relationship,
Okay.
right? So kind of developing that trust, earning that, being the go-to person that when someone has a business problem or a need, they think, hey, I'm going to reach out to Nate because he probably knows the right person or he can help me solve this problem. So,
So it's more about building relationships than it has to do with even persuading.
oh, significantly more. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In our world, it's all about relationships. I think generally, if you have the relationships, the persuasion kind of comes naturally, just because people already know you and they trust you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, I've got one last question for you. This is a
Sure.
reflection question. If you were to go back in time and advise your 17-year-old self, and you want them to be able to be hired, be successful, eventually be promoted, what would you tell yourself to develop first and why?
Mm. Um, I have always struggled with maintaining relationships for people who are not in my immediate sphere. It's really easy for, like, even at school, I remember I would have friends and roommates who I was really like tight with, and then you move apartments and you're like 5 minutes down the road and you never talk to them again.
Right.
Um, like it's always been a struggle for me is kind of keeping in contact and keeping those relationships strong when people aren't like there kind of day to day anyways. Yeah, I think if I were to go back, I would say, don't neglect those relationships, like build your network and keep it strong. Nobody else will do it. I found that hardly anybody in my network reaches out to me, to check in.
Yeah.
So they're all doing the same thing I'm doing. but I think I think if I had done a better job, just even early in my career, just catching up with people periodically, even after we'd moved on and kind of gone separate directions, I think it probably would have paid off in dividends. So
There,
yeah,
that uh, just investing in those relationships again,
yeah,
those
yeah,
relationships, that seems to be a theme that I've found too, is
mm,
being able to develop those relationships.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Oh, good. Well, I'm excited about my findings. So those are the 10 questions I have. Um, I'm taking the Napoleon Hill approach. Have you ever heard of the book Seven Keys to Success?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Napoleon Hill, he went about interviewing really not necessarily famous, but successful people that just kind of grew in their area, like Henry Ford, some
Um,
famous actors back in the day. And he asked them the same questions, and then he formed seven keys to success.
hmm,
And that's kind of my approach with this is I've got those 10 questions. I'm going to see what rises to the top and see if we can find the best practice that we can apply to the students here at BYU Idaho so we can get them more ready for you in the workforce.
yeah, no, that's great.
So,
You
so
know,
that's
and one, just you're mentioning that there with the students. One thing, just as kind of a final thought, for the younger generations, we found communication skills are a struggle at times, and you've probably seen that as a professor as you teach. The ability to talk face to face, to keep like
yeah,
maintain eye contact, to pick up a phone and call. Like I've struggled with that with my own kids too. Um,
yeah.
like there's some basic communication skills I think those of us who are a little older take for granted and find really easy, and they really struggle. We've seen that a lot with with the younger kids that we hire too. So I think if you can't talk to somebody and you can't look them in the eye and communicate, like you're going to have a hard time developing relationships and building a network and and adding that value that at least all the other things we've talked about.
Oh, I love that. And I do see that even in my classroom.
Mm,
They have a hard time functioning without their phone being in hand
right.
or right next to them.
Right. Yeah.
So, oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I want to be very cognizant of your time, and we're right at or a little bit over 30 minutes.
Yeah. It's
Um,
fun.
but if as I move forward with this, do you mind if I reach back out to you to see if there's anybody else in your circles, your relationships that I might be able to talk to? If you,
Sure. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be
Just let me know.
wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to you probably in a week because I'm going to go camping with my family this next week. But uh, I'm trying to get to 100 interviews,
Oh, okay.
and I think you're 35. So I'm
Good.
getting there,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it's a slow process.
Okay. Yeah. I
So
have a few people in mind. So yeah,
wonderful.
just let me know.
Okay. Well, Nate, thank you. It was good to meet you, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you connecting with me.
Yeah. Likewise. And yeah, and good chatting.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Yeah.